To lose fat, you have to just eat chicken and broccoli, and that's it. That's not true. Not true at all, okay? Actually, doing that is a great way to not lose weight. Let me rephrase, to not lose fat. And I think that this subject of how to eat to lose fat is essential today, especially with GLP-1s. They work. Our medical providers at Strength After 30 will use those where appropriate for people. However, and in fact, I've taken them and I learned some mistakes on those that I'll go over later. When it comes to food, it's about creating things that are easy, okay? And that fit into your life. You do not fit your life into a program or into a diet. It is the other way around. Otherwise, you won't stick with it. It's a great way to get results for, a couple of months. This is like when people work with personal trainers in person and they get they get some results, but then as soon as that framework is gone, it all falls apart. And a lot of times people end up putting on more weight. I mean, go look at the Biggest Loser show where all those people put that weight back on because they didn't have that support system. Your life is the support system. So this is why we have to figure out how to fit these pieces in and create a framework. And so you can absolutely lose fat and gain muscle without it being hard. And I know that sounds like BS, but it's true. There are different modes of eating to meet our goals. And you don't have to be a meatitarian. You don't have to just live on chicken and rice. It's about finding out what little things can we pick up? What are those nickels and dimes in your life that we can leverage? Assuming that you're not a vegan or a vegetarian, we can come back to that later, but just having a protein base in your fridge that is what you use over and over and over again is a huge advantage. Okay, so the classic is chicken. Again, if you're vegan or a vegetarian, you have different bases. You have seitan, tempeh, soy, tofu. You have lots of options that you can use here. But the important thing is to prepare that base and then also prepare it some different ways. There's some interesting things that you can do. So for example, I love 99.1 lean ground turkey because it's basically ground beef. Now granted, it has its own flavor, but you can season it up how you want, okay? Don't be afraid of salt unless you're hypertensive. Salt is your friend when it comes to performance. And then that's why that's why in all the electrolyte drinks, that's why there's salt, because it helps with performance and helps with hydration. There's a reason that wars were fought over this thing for centuries. So it's really important. The medical community just overcorrected with hypertension and basically just applied that to everybody. That's wrong. That is not true. That is not how this works. Okay. So I know this because when I was in my 20s and I wanted to get in shape because I was single for a little while, we would boil the chicken, and then we'd take it out and we'd actually wring it out to get any good stuff out of it effectively. And then I would use Mrs. Dash because there's no sodium. And also for what it is, there was decent flavor, but that was a tough life. Okay, lost a lot of weight. I think I lost a lot of years off of my life doing that. You don't have to do that, okay? So find a lean protein base, leverage it, and then find ways to also satiate yourself. So when it comes to building this food, if we're saving a lot of calories by using such a lean base, you can do this with steak too, okay? Like you just get either a filet cut or New York cut, get rid of the fat cap, and oh my God, you have saved so many calories. But you need fats, okay? You need fat. You need about 30% of your calories should come from fat. So we don't want you to go low fat or ultra low fat, because then that's actually going to mess with your hormones. And that's going to put you in an even worse position than where you started. Don't do that. Okay. If you have a medical condition where you have to manage your fat intake, okay, fine. Defer to your doctor. For everyone else, you need fat. Your hormones need fat. But I'd rather get fats from something that's tasty, that satiates me, than something that doesn't really do much for me. Now, granted, if you're a person that just loves sitting there gnawing on the fat cap of a New York steak, okay, use that. For everybody else, I would rather have some cheese or eggs in the morning with the yolks. And so that is a great source of fat. And so you get your omega-3s, and granted, you can do that through fish oil, you can do it through fish. There's lots of options there. You can do it through supplementation, whatever works best for you. But regardless, because that's why they always talk about good fats like avocados, all that. It doesn't have to be good fat. It can just be fat. But just get your omega-3s somehow. So then we're going to take something that tastes good, that feels like a reward. And so that could be cheese. It could be low-fat sour cream. It could be creme fraiche. It could be, oh gosh, why am I blanking on it? Cottage cheese. Cottage cheese. That's a home run right there. Protein and a little bit of fat. You can actually also use maybe in your coffee, heavy cream. That's an option if you need that, if that's what you need, and kind of make yourself like a little whipped frappe or whatever it is there. So there's lots of options here. But if you, again, that lean protein base, then you can add fats in. And then if you want to use whatever for your carbs, whether that's tortillas, if that's rice, if it's vegetables, if it's pasta. So the Italian part of my family, they're the Ferraris. Now they're not the Ferraris because it's like, Johnson over there. But so there's been a lot of pasta in my household, and with gravy, not with sauce, with gravy, right? So that's the Ferrari, not necessarily the Adams side. So if you have that covered, you need carbs too, okay? We went on this whole keto and low carb and Atkins and all that stuff there for a while. If you want to perform and have glycogen in your system and be able to function, you're going to need carbs. So that's where you fill your calories from. So if you get your protein intake down, again, about 1 gram per pound at a minimum, going over that, and actually if you're older, you actually need more. So you actually need more protein if you're north of 50. And then getting your fats, that should be about 30% of your calories, and then fitting the rest in via carbs. And this is where you have adjustments, all right? This is where if we're looking to recomp, all right, which means I want to add muscle and lose fat. You can do both at the same time, but it's going to be a slight caloric deficit. I'm going to say about 10%. So if your maintenance calories, which if you need help figuring this out, we have our bio optimization offer, and then we also have our 168, which starts at $27. We can help you establish that. Really great program. So let's find out your maintenance calories. Take about 10% off of that. Could go 15, even more aggressive, but about 10% seems to be about right. And then having your protein intake and do not save calories on protein. If anything, eat in excess on protein, okay? And then trim down your carbs. You can start taking some from fats if we need to pull more off because you're just not getting the fat loss. But I would really don't judge a recomposition diet based on the scale. Use the mirror and use your clothes. How does your belt fit? How do your shoulders look in your shirt? How do your pants fit? How do you look in the mirror? Did you catch yourself walking by and there was just good lighting, all of a sudden your tricep kind of popped a little bit? Okay, use that as a gauge, not the scale. Then if we need to trim, okay, we need to go more aggressive on calorie restriction. Okay, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can eat a recomp diet and add in more cardio, more steps. You should be getting around 8,000 steps a day, ideally more, but 8,000 is a pretty good baseline. You can do that and then add in a little bit of additional cardio. That's a way of you helping with your VO2 max, which is one of the leading indicators of longevity in addition to strength. Just being strong as heck. Those are the main ones, actually. So if you have that and you just eat in a slight deficit and then add in some cardio, that's a pretty simple way. If you'd rather go, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and spend 20 minutes, on an elliptical or on a bike or, swimming, whatever your preferred method is. It could be an activity. You enjoy playing hockey, flag football, any number of things. Use that, and that way you don't have to sacrifice on the food front, but you are getting an additional deficit from doing that. If that's still not aggressive enough, then we need to lean into a cut. And adding into a cut means that we are restricting calories even more. If you want to lose weight, then you do have to be in a deficit. I'm sorry. And when I say weight, I mean fat. You are gonna want to be, if you're in a cut, you're gonna want to be even more protective of your protein. And this is where I would actually scale up protein even more. You may need to trim off a little bit of fat. Now, fortunately, 1 gram of fat, 9 calories versus 4 calories on protein. So trimming a little bit of fat goes a long way. Don't go below 20% of your total calories on fats. Really want to stay close to 30, but if we can go as low as 20, don't go much more than that. And then take the rest from carbs. You will likely start to notice sacrifices in performance. You may get more tired. Being in a cut is tough, and that's why cuts should be short term. Don't live like this. This is a temporary thing. Alternatively, you can increase your cardio and your caloric expenditure even more. However, that's, the vast majority of it is going to come from just you existing. Our activity makes up a pretty small portion of the calories that we actually use. And here's the fun part. As you get smaller, your body's going to get more efficient and you are going to burn less calories just existing. So this can create a pretty vicious cycle, and that's why I want this to be a temporary thing. And this is also where you can look to leverage weight loss medications if appropriate. These aren't Skittles. People are using this stuff left and right now. There's a lot of lessons to be learned with taking weight loss medication. For example, you are likely going to lose muscle because you can't take in enough calories and you're not able to train hard enough. Getting your protein on that is hard, and that's why, like in our biooptimization, if people are using medically guided weight loss, that's a very, very specific protocol on how you're going to eat, how you're going to actually supplement the things that you're going to do, because it's tough. If you start losing muscle, we have to get that back at some point. And so basically you end up spinning your wheels a bit. So it is a very targeted thing to be used. Do not use these things willy-nilly. Don't just order stuff, online, for the hell of it to give it a try. It is a medication and it should be treated as such. Okay, this is serious stuff. And then on the other side of that, if we need to add muscle and strength, now we need to start looking at being in a caloric surplus. And if you're going to be in a surplus, we got to be smart, okay? Because surpluses can be a lot of fun. If you're in what's called a dirty bulk, where you are just mashing as much calories as you can possibly get, that's a fun place for a while. So I went on a bulk. I added a lot of mass. So I added a lot of muscle, but I also added a lot of fluff. And but I was the strongest I have ever been, but I was finding I was breathing heavy, my ankles were getting swollen, and that's when I knew the cut was over, and it was a dirty bulk. It was dirty. You don't want to do that. Let me save you that. If you're going to bulk, you should treat it as if it is a cut, okay? You can actually bulk for a lot longer than cutting, because it takes a while to actually build muscle. Okay? It doesn't take that long to burn fat if you're in a caloric deficit. To build mass, it takes time. Think of building a building. It takes a lot longer to build a building than it does to knock one down. And so this is where using your bulks strategically and treating it as if it's a cut. Okay, so where you are going in a slight surplus. And this, fortunately, with bulking, you can course correct pretty quick. So if you're not really adding mass, you're not seeing your numbers go up, your strength's not increasing, add a little bit more, okay? But use those same principles of, okay, I'm using my protein base, I'm adding in my fats, I'm adding in my carbs. Increase proteins first. Increase protein, and then if you need to, you can increase carbs. But again, I would suggest increasing proteins. But I know that can be tough to do because you can only eat so much chicken and all that. And it's a lot easier to eat this much more rice. And one of the things to realize is that going into a bulk, how little an extra, let's say 250 to 300 calories really is. That's like that much in almonds, okay? It's really not that much. So be very controlled. Don't go crazy. You can have a little bit of fun in a bulk. Go out and maybe eat a little bit more on Saturday. Get a little, a little more fun food. Sure, but be very careful, because once you establish that as a habit, it is very difficult to break, because then just going back into maintenance, just going back to a recomp can be really tough. And I would suggest, once you've achieved your goal on a bulk, to actually go into a recomp phase, because you probably are going to have more body fat. And it can be really tough to go from a full transition from bulking to cutting. That can be very tough, but going back to maintenance really isn't so bad. And actually, because you're a little bigger, your maintenance is a little bit higher. So that way you can do this, kind of like a bulk. I'm making this up right now. Let's say 3 months, 4 months on a bulk. And then you can go to a recomp, and then we can see what kind of progress you can make on that. Are you losing weight? Are you still adding more muscle? Or are you still putting on weight because you're not actually recomping and you're still sneaking snacks like you're on your bulk, okay? Go into that recomp phase. Again, easier to course correct there, less dramatic. And then if you need to, because we recomp down to where basically you plateau, you're not really adding a lot more muscle, you're not really losing any more fat, okay, it may be time to look at that point doing another cut. But cuts should be short, a couple of months, because you don't want to live like that. And I don't want to sacrifice the muscle that you built during a bulk, during a cut, as little as possible. Because if you lose a pound of muscle and you lose a pound of fat, what was the point, okay? Anyways, that is how eat for your goal. That's how you eat to lose fat. Again, most of you should just be in a recomp, but bulking, cutting can be done strategically. And if you want professional help with this, go ahead and check us out, strengthafter30.com or SA program or SA30program.com for our women's program. And then also you can check out our 168, which is where there's only 168 hours in a week. How do we use them better? And that starts at $27. So anyways, guys, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. Like and subscribe. Check out the description.